This was question 4?
No, sir. Question 3. Sometimes well-intended government programs come
okay.
with implementation.
Okay. Yeah, we did 2 things to help here. We set up a business development office at Fort Detrick. That's when we had earmarks and we could do that. Set up a business development office. There's so many regulations, so much red tape. It just scares off small business. So we set up this business development office outside the gate so you don't have to go through security to get there. Another thing that we've done, we've held a long series, I think we're up around 20 now, of procurement conferences. We have the government people come and present the opportunities to small business. It's a great opportunity for networking. They are very well attended. We have the top people from the government come to make the presentations as to what programs are going on, what job opportunities are available. And one of the big problems have been that too many people come in from out of state. We just want the buyers and the government to cast a wider net to make sure they're offering opportunities to local business people. I don't know how to reward people for failure, but once in a while, if your net is cast broadly enough, you're going to have someone who doesn't measure up, who misses the mark. Our government procurement people are far too limited. If Joe and Sam both submit proposals and they know Joe, but Sam really maybe had a better proposal, they're greater in how well their contractor performs. They're probably going to give that job to the guy that they know from the past. We need to encourage them to cast a wider net. But primarily we need to reduce regulations so it's easier. Now we have to do a lot of hand-holding so that they can successfully get these jobs. We need to reduce those regulations. It'll be easier.
Thank you, Congressman. The 4th question this morning deals with access to capital. What should the federal government do or be doing to increase the local businesses' access to capital? First person to answer that question will be candidate Chris Dvorsky.
The U.S. is ranked number 13 in ease of starting a business. We should be ranked number 1. We're a free market. We're supposed to be a free market economy. We should be number 1, not 13. We should be supporting functional capital markets. We have to lessen restrictions on businesses. You know, part of access to capital has to do with a little bit with predictability too, with taxation and regulations. We have to reduce job taxes. Sorry, I'm repeating myself, I apologize. Greater access to SBA loans, the SBA 504 program, greater access to capital. And what Congressman can do is help these small businesses go through the red tape and help them go through the loan application process in the local office here in Washington and set up meetings and set up educational programs for small businesses on how to gain access to capital and how to go about navigating the federal bureaucracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Second person to answer that question will be candidate Ripien.
Thank you. I think what we're talking about here is the federal government's role in the economy. The federal government should have a balanced budget. We should have a strong dollar. We need to promote savings and investment. We have to reform this archaic tax code that we have. Look, being in the private sector, I believe that the government gets in the way between a business and the customer. I believe that government being involved in the economy is the problem. It is not the solution. So overall, I would like to see less government involvement in the economy, less regulation, and let people like yourselves, the private sector, take over. That is how we grow this economy, and that's how we put America back to work, is relying on the private sector, getting the government out of the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Third person to answer that question will be candidate Colvin.
Thank you. We all saw and understand what the government intrusion did in the free market with the housing industry. I don't want that to happen again, and I'm certain that you guys feel the same. I think government should allow for a free market to dictate investments, and I would also advocate for repealing burdensome regulations such as Dodd-Frank. That bill creates a consumer watchdog and provides for authoritative and aggressive oversight, and that certainly does not create a friendly business climate. I would also like to reform the tax code to a flat or fair tax. You hear about the 1%ers, but what about the 47% that don't pay taxes at all? I think a flat or fair tax will broaden the tax base and help generate revenue and strengthen our economy. The inability to access sufficient credit remains one of the biggest issues that small businesses face today. And if we make that less restrictive to raise capital, investors have the opportunity to seek and match themselves with a qualified investor. I also feel when a loan originates, perhaps the lender and borrower can put some money aside in a fund held by the lender. I think the program should be limited to small businesses under 500 employees, and it would be open to both for-profit and not-for-profit organizations, excluding real estate, gambling, and speculation activities.
Thank you, Angela. Fifth question this morning has to do with infrastructure. There are some infrastructures, there is infrastructure in this community, and even at the state level, that could never be built or maintained without federal help. Interstates 81 and 70, for example, carry multiples of their intended volume, and yet there are few resources to fully upgrade them. And it's not just interstates. Bridges, electrical grids, pipelines, internet access all determine the health of a business community. What can you do to help Washington County repair, maintain, and improve upon its current critical infrastructure? First person to answer will be candidate James.
I love that other question, but I'll try to get through this first and get back to that. Well, Congress, I'm an enumerated powers guy, so Congress has taken up the roads thing through the post office, the post roads clause, and they've overstepped the bounds. I'm more inclined to give you back that 18 cents in gas tax and let you maintain it. I sort of can't accept the premise that it can never be built or maintained. We only have 50 states. We're building roads for 50 states. If we can't sustain it from a local economy, we probably were in big trouble. And it goes back to most of your businessmen, and what is really the problem here is insufficient money in circulation. Government, you don't go to government to get your loan, you go to your bank. And when the bank stops lending, your business goes under. So that's a really important, and this is outside. Congress has given away the power to coin money and set its value, which I think was unlawful. And this puts the control over our lives and your businesses in the hands of basically a banking monopoly, which walks around to sector, bringing them down, buying them up, and going to your next sector. Particularly the small business person is in trouble when that happens.
I would remind all candidates, please, let's keep our answers confined to the question. Delegate Afzali will be the second person to answer that question.
Thank you. I first have to explain that a lot of the issues with the bridges and the roads and so forth is actually a state issue. And our governor, Governor O'Malley, has rated the transportation fund in the tune of billions of dollars. So while the state is saying that they don't have money in the transportation fund, it's because it was rated by our governor. But with that said, we have to also see that there is federal transportation money that needs to come to Washington County. And what's very important for you to know is that your congresswoman will be a driver and not a passenger. You don't want someone who goes to Washington and just keeps her head down just to get along in order to get another term and another term and another term. You want someone who's going to get down there and work hard to bring back what is rightfully yours. If it's federal transportation dollars, it is yours to have, and you need someone very aggressive down there advocating for you for that money. A lot of your constituents here go down the road to Montgomery County, to the job centers in D.C. and Montgomery County. And I-270 has not changed in the last 20 years. That is federal dollars that needs to come back to the District 6, that needs to be focused on our roads and our commuters going back and forth to their jobs. And that's what keeps the economy going here, is your people need to get to their jobs.
Thank you. Third person will be candidate Colbert.
Thank you. Well, President Obama would ask you to carry a tire gauge along with you so you can get more fuel economy out of your miles per gallon for your car. But in reality, the Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration, spends about $50 billion annually. And that budget mostly consists of grants to the states to fund highways and for infrastructure improvements. I believe federal financing has become an increasingly inefficient way to modernize America's highways. Federal spending is often, if not always, misallocated to lower value activities. And we need to modernize the regulations that go along with federal spending because when you get a grant, state gets a grant, you have regulations that go hand in hand with that. And so that needs to be reduced as much as possible. And that also, those regulations also, as you know, stifle innovation and increase costs and also job creation. I believe taxpayers and transportation users would be better off in federal highway spending by cutting that out. We would save money on taxes, fuel costs, and related regulations if they were all eliminated. And state and local governments can work with local transportation authorities without any federal intervention, and they should move towards a market pricing for transportation usage and expend the private sector's role in the funding and operation of highways.
Sixth question this morning: what industries and community assets have you identified as building blocks for economic development in Washington County, and what role will you play as our congressional representative? First person this morning to answer that question will be Senator Brinkley.
Thank you. You know, all of Western Maryland and Washington County in particular has some incredible assets. Number one, in my opinion, is the airport. The airport is key, and we've seen a lot of benefits coming from that, but also with the with the runway the way it is and some of the work that can happen. Why do I say that? Because a lot of the large corporations are looking for where they can bring in their aircraft and bring their personnel in. I think that's something that has been utilized very effectively. But then we look at the northeast end of the county with Fort Ritchie. Fort Ritchie being shut down, I think, is crippling. There's an incredible opportunity there to bring that back, up and running, and keep people going. The other big aspect that we have, and I don't know that has been explored enough, is history. With the C&O towpath, the Civil War history, and thereby tourism, yes, it has been used. Yes, filmmaking comes here to provide some critical jobs and all, but are they necessarily consistent? No. Why is history so key? Because you do have some very large population bases that can easily get here, and those are parts that far western Maryland, have yet to be able to tap and access. And then with some of the structures that we've had from prior industries, yes, they can be rehabbed, but Maryland's economic environment has to be made friendly to that effect, and I think it would take some push from the federal side to help ensure that that can take place here. There are lots of choices on where a person can locate their job. We want them back in Maryland, not West Virginia, not Virginia, nor Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Second person for that question will be candidate Ficker.
I want you to know, be very clear about this. I am going to make Western Maryland #1 instead of the tail on the dog. We haven't had a U.S. Senator from anywhere but Baltimore since 1980. We're an afterthought. We need someone to stand up for our area, just as I did when I was one of 3 speakers at the protest against raising the gas tax, which is hurting every one of you if they raise that gas tax. What infrastructure do we need? What benefits do we need here? Let's widen 81. Let's widen 270 going down to Washington so that people have access here. This past weekend, I was out in St. Louis with the University of Maryland wrestling team at the NCAA championships. I thought I was on the Autobahn the whole weekend, the roads they have there. We need to improve access here. Instead of taking all our transportation money and building the red line in Baltimore and the purple line between Prince George's County and Montgomery inside the Beltway. Let's make Washington County number one instead of an afterthought. And that's going to take some